Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Nitin Chandran, the founder and CEO of MedPiper. Nitin was a part of Y Combinator cohort last year. Hi Nitin, welcome to ELI.
Hi, Priya. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I am Nitin, the co-founder and CEO at MedPiper Technologies. My co-founder is Pranay Suyesh. He's also the CTO. What we primarily do at MedPiper is we help practitioners, which means doctors and to a certain extent nurses. In India. Currently, we cater primarily to doctors in India. Profile themselves online, and once they profile, we create opportunity alerts, career pathways, upskilling and specialization courses, and more. So currently on the platform, we have about 120,000 practitioners who have signed up from about 8 countries globally. The most activity is in India, but we also have fair amount of users from the Middle East, from parts of Africa, Malaysia, Philippines, etc. And we're a small team. We're about 12 people right now, and based out of Bangalore, and some remote stuff globally.
Okay, Nitin, now let's talk about your journey from the very beginning. How tell us your story, how you got into this path of entrepreneurship. What made you to think about entrepreneurship in the first place?
Right. So I guess I got into this without even knowing this is what is. I mean, I did my graduation 2006 2010 from a college called Amity University, Noida. So while being 2008 2009 was the early years of Facebook in India. Facebook and Twitter were just coming in. That's when it started getting into colleges. And I remember 2007 when Facebook was still there in India. A lot of people on campus did not still get it, and the crowd was still a little technologically advanced and stuff. So 2008, I saw an opportunity where a lot of independent artists. So I was a big fan of independent music in India at that point of time. I knew a certain amount of artists and stuff, and I saw that none of these people were able to reach out to the audience that was there digitally, because for them it was still not a part and parcel of their publicity, right? Because at that point of time, publicity was still doing gigs at Hard Rocks or similar pubs and getting your print ads and stuff. So it started off as my journey started off on a very small level, helping out the bands that I knew, knowing that I could sell passes in the hostel, because we had a fair amount of people in the hostel. So hustling basically. And slowly you start noticing that you are generating more leads than probably what the bands themselves are doing. And then a spark goes off that, what, if I can do this well for them, I could probably do it for another 10 bands. And yeah, from 2 bands that we knew, we were handling about close to 15 bands. And it started taking off at that point of time. I mean, in hostel you're earning money, nothing can be better, right? You're like, oh, okay, I figured something out and this is amazing. Then in 2010, which was my final year of college, we there was also something called Microsoft Imagine Cup. So although I'm from mechanical engineering, I've been fairly interested in tech. I've always wanted to do something in tech. So we became one of the global finalists for a completely different category, game design. But that was when I decided that, what, okay, this thing seems to be working pretty well. And there was validation from Imagine Cup on the tech aspect, which is again, digital engagement. So why don't I club this? And so I created what is called Still Alive Media, which was my first startup. And even the name was based on a song called Still Alive at that point of time. That's how. So early years, I would say pretty naive. Looking back on it, a lot of mistakes, a lot of learnings, because for one, it ended up being a lifestyle business. It didn't really, because later on you had those startup boom years in India. And one thing I learned from that period of time was that uh, nobody is there to mentor you or tell you that, what, there are lifestyle businesses, there are startups, there's growth, there's marketing and stuff. So you're just doing what comes your way and trying to build a business. And at the same time, you're kind of looking outwards and saying, why aren't I growing the same way that others are growing, right? So ran it for a few years. We expanded from Delhi to having a studio in Trivandrum, managing artists both north and south. But by 2014, I'd kind of figured out that this is going to remain. I mean, we had kind of attained a peak, and there were better players, well-funded players getting into the market. And so that's when I decided to, take a break from that. One of those major learnings was operationally. What I had also seen was it's all well and good to have a startup right out in college, but there's a lot of gaps that you fail to notice when you have not worked for a existing institution or organization, right? And so I decided to put my startup ideas on hold for a while. I picked up a job. So my other co-founders are still alive. The firm is still running today. It's still active. They still do events, and they still work with artists. So then I worked for a management consulting firm that primarily worked in healthcare. I did a 3-year stint with them, and post that, for a very short duration, there was a carpooling platform called QCride in India. It's still there. I was leading their growth partnerships and alliances. So in terms of my overall work experience, 10 years. In my early startup, I was working primarily on business development and sales. Later on, went to consulting and again primarily focused on BD. Then worked in a growth role, had some success there. And then eventually coming back to MedPiper. So when I was working for healthcare consulting, even prior to that, one of the few things that I noticed was I knew a lot of people in my batch from school, cousins, a lot of doctors. There was a stark difference between the people who were based out of urban cities and non-urban cities. So the ones, even senior like uncles or aunts who are doctors, if they're in the city, they're kind of set. They have multiple consultations and everything. But the ones who were not based out of the cities, they were finding it difficult to even get a I would say a permanent stint with a hospital or have a continuous engagement. That was on one side of the thing. And on the other side, during my stint at management consulting, I noticed that a lot of hospitals, the biggest bottleneck for hospitals is that they don't find practitioners readily available to them when they need them, right? And it's kind of curious, because if you're looking at only one side of the problem, you're going to sit and feel like, okay, that is how the market dynamics is. But when you start connecting the dots, you realize that it isn't as much as a problem of supply demand as much as it is about information asymmetry. So there are practitioners on one side who do not know that there's an opportunity pool available, and that there are hospitals that actually need them. And this asymmetry primarily exists because of regulations, which also exist for just for the sake that identity mapping or profiling is very difficult in pretty much everywhere in the world. It's not just a problem for India or Asia. The same way that a practitioner from let's say Tamil Nadu cannot just randomly go and practice in Delhi without, he will need to go through barriers of canceling his medical license in Tamil Nadu and then going and reapplying, getting an NOC. Even in the US, it's the same. The barriers are actually much more higher there. So we launched as a pilot. So me and Pranay was with ENY at that point of time. He was a senior IT architect. So we started ideating that, what, we think there's a gap here. uh, Coincidentally, 2019 he had landed up in Bangalore. I was already in Bangalore. So me and Pranay, we had been roommates since first year of college. So that's 2006. So we knew each other for close to 14 years now. One of the best tech folks that I've known, even from college days. So somebody I could like completely blindly go and say that, what, Pranay, I think we need to build this. So he would even ask, why are we building this, only after he's built it. He's like, okay, bana to diya, ab batao kya karna hai isse. That good, like completely dedicated, and he will sit in the night and finish the modules and stuff. So we started talking about this, and that's when we started off actually just as a Facebook page in September 2019, just to see if this thing works. We started off with 8 doctors. Around, I guess, the 22nd of September. And by the end of September, we had already reached 200 doctors. We were like, okay, something seems to be right, because we're not spending anything on marketing. It's just a Facebook page. We were giving about 2 or 3 hours a week. That's it. And then by December, as the numbers started growing up more, we started giving a little bit more hours. And by December, we were at close to 1,000 practitioners, December 2019. And that's when we applied for Y Combinator the first time. So at that point of time, we did get through the screening, and we were told that, okay, it looks good. You seem to be proving a hypothesis, but you have not proved it yet, right? Which was true for us also, because we were also working on our jobs at that point of time. We had not taken the full jump yet. So then we decided that let's put in two numbers. Let's have a revenue target and a user target. Let's try to hit 10,000 practitioners on the platform, and let's try to hit a certain revenue number. And if you're hitting those numbers, we're like, okay, there might be a market here and there might be a business here, right? And we hit the revenue target, I guess, in February. We hit the practitioner sign up target in March, actually the first week of March, when COVID was just starting to come into India. And that's when both of us put in our papers, and we started the process for registration of a company. In April, MedPiper was born as an official company. Before that, it was called Docal, doctors locally. That was the thing. And so we registered as MedPiper in April 20. By that time, we already had a fair amount of practitioners on the platform. We moved from being a Facebook group to a WhatsApp and Telegram group to a bot model. And by September, we already had our app out. And it was during this time that we reapplied to Y Combinator again, and we had much better numbers, but much better metrics. And yeah, that's how. And also, I'm guessing because of COVID, the focus on mapping practitioners became all the more important, because it didn't matter what vaccination plans you had, it didn't matter how many hospitals existed. Until you had the right practitioners on field, everything was moot. So it became important globally also to map who's a practitioner, what are his credentials, where is he from, as well as for practitioners to get the SOPs that this hospital has this kind of facilities, this safety measures are already there, this is the kind of patients they attract. And yeah, that was how we started.
Sounds like an interesting journey. Few questions I have on that on what we
Sure.
discussed just now. First, tell us uh, how how do you find once you have got an idea that this is something I want to execute, how do you find the right people to execute that idea? What is the thought process behind it that you go through?
Interesting question, because even today our biggest challenge is hiring. Finding right, I mean, finding a co-founder, I guess I was super lucky with it, because in my mind I always knew that if I wanted something in tech, I know somebody whom I can go back to. The only question for me was, will he be willing to come and do it with me? And Pranay was. So I was super lucky with that. Finding good tech, um, the biggest problem for what a lot of people never say it out is a biggest problem for you when you're a startup. Honestly, nothing else, it's money, right? So people who are really good with tech are not going to come at the cost that you can afford them, right? And so then you really don't have an option. You sit and start doing stuff on your own. We actually did it. Although I am not per se a person who's deep into coding and stuff, we started splitting the work and we started doing it. Early days, it's a lot of, you guys are going to have to take a lot of the baggage for technology products. And the way we worked around it is, we just literally broke down the MVP process to its most basic idea. We were like, we won't even do out an app until we are 10,000 practitioners. We will just run it on bots, WhatsApp and Telegram. WhatsApp has a limit, Telegram does not have a limit. So and anyway, when you're a startup, you're trying to do things small, things that don't scale. So we did not want to reach out to practitioners who were probably not on Telegram. Our whole idea was like, let's do it on Telegram and see how much numbers we attract here. Let's do it on WhatsApp and see what comes out of it.
Okay. How about the funds part? You say you have around 12 employees now, and probably before getting into Y Combinator, you would be burning some amount of cash. How did you manage those stuff?
So we were bootstrapped pre-YC, and we were making a bit of money, which covered our. So pre-YC, we were just 3 people. So, and it was just the founder expenses plus one more. We had a team that was working for us freelance per se. So that was just about covering those costs, and we were making that amount of money. So we had, as I said, the two numbers that we focused on was, in India, healthcare was notorious for not making money. So we wanted to be really sure that, and also notorious for spending very high numbers on CAC. So especially if it's practitioner related. So we grew organically to 10,000 practitioners. We hit certain revenue milestone numbers, which ensured that we would not have to go looking for money.
Okay. Tell us what is the vision you have for this venture? Ultimately, what you want to build out of this startup you have?
Right.
What I mean
So,
to say is,
uh,
what is the final
yeah,
product of MedPiper?
right. The long term goal is that, let's say you're a practitioner in India, right? Today, if you want to go and work in the US, there's a lot of barriers. You just can't do it outright. But you're treating the same physiology. The humans are the same. The conditions are the same. Regulations might be slightly different, but you really don't have to go and recertify for that. The reason these barriers exist is you've had traditionally regulated ecosystems where profiling is super difficult. So the goal of MedPiper is to build a platform, a global platform, where today, for a lot of purposes, you send your LinkedIn URL to say that, hey, this is who I am, right? Um our big vision is that for a practitioner, all it requires is for him to send his MedPiper profile URL. And that will have his complete track record. Everything that is relevant to the industry will be mapped there. So it reduces the barriers that he will have to transition between states or between geographies. So we are already running pilots with a few governments in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, and if they go well, governments and yeah, government stakeholders are very important to what we do. So the goal is that MedPaper becomes a single profiling identity for medical practitioners everywhere in the world.
So, does it have a blockchain component to it?
Ledger component is interesting, but it is something that we are actually running as a pilot in house. uh, we are yet to say for sure if that is 100% the solution going forward. We are seeing it out, we are seeing how it works. We'll get to know, because pathways differ, right? In the US, a nurse can become a doctor, right? You can over time gain an experience. In India, you cannot. So blockchains work if certain systems, the parallels that exist everywhere are very similar. We are trying out a few technologies, including blockchain right now. Is that the right one? I mean, these are experimental days. We'll get to know for sure going ahead only.
Okay. Tell us what are some of the challenges you have faced along the way while building and growing this venture?
Um, Challenges has been the biggest challenge for us is that both me and Pranay, we are actually not doctors, right? So how does that user think is a big question mark for us. And the way we went about it is we got people in our network who were doctors to come in and sit in from early days. So even if it's about putting a button or building an icon, we run it by them and we make sure that understanding that user, especially since that user is completely from a different niche, and we are building not even for their personal purpose, we're building it for the professional purpose. So it's 100% important and pivotal that it runs by them, and they validate that it works. So that is still a challenge today. The second is tech is challenging. So in I guess the biggest difference is that like if you get into programs like YC, you're working with some of the smartest people who in a week like build a product, put it out, and in the second week they have like 1 million users. um, I guess because of where because of the way the skilling works in India, you're not taught to ideate. You're not taught to build stuff, right? You're taught to implement stuff. So that slows us down considerably, but we have still been, thankfully we have had very smart people whom we have been able to find. And yeah, that's, I mean, two early challenges are this.
Okay. Uh, uh, what are some of the interesting lessons you have learned over the year as an entrepreneur?
Interesting lessons. Okay, a fair amount of them. First is do not build anything without talking to your users. Don't just even go to the building part. Start trying to manually do it. Um, do it small. Do things that don't scale. But until you have the right metrics and you get validation for those metrics, don't spend, because you have the sunk cost fallacy, right? People start investing time and money and they think that, you know what, I need to put in. I've actually experienced that. I've put in a lot of money, wasted a lot of time on a lot of things, and you learn it the hard way. The second is, again, something that I mentioned right now: do not have fancy metrics which will give you a impression that you're growing. It doesn't matter how hard it is, how difficult it is. Just stick to metrics that actually mean something. I've seen a lot of people who in my network who have tried to do stuff, try to have, you know what, we are X percentage of Y, but that Y technically itself is insignificant, right? But you are trying to appease yourself. Don't do that. It's okay to be let down, because that will give you the energy or the push to work harder. But yeah, I mean, these are two things that I would say have been my biggest learnings.
Okay. The final question I have, tell us about Y Combinator, why you applied for Y Combinator in the first place, and what impact it has been for you. Or, how Y Combinator impacted your journey as an entrepreneur.
Right. Y Combinator was interesting for me for a few key reasons. A being, we once we figured out that the market, addressable market, is huge, that the opportunity size is huge, and the problem gap is huge. We were sure we wanted to build a global company, and something of the nature of what we do has not been built in India. There's a Japanese company which does this for Japan and Korea. There's a company in the US, which is again from Y Combinator, that does this for the US. So by default, Y Combinator ended up being the go-to choice. So just to mention this, we were also we are incubated out of IIM Bangalore. So IIM Bangalore was supportive, was helpful for us to figure out a lot of things early on. And once we had hit particular steps, we understood that there's a larger opportunity pool out there, and you need to plug into the right ecosystem, get the right sort of mentorship to understand what it is that you should not be doing. That is more important than anybody telling you these are the right steps, because nobody can tell you that. You're building something new, right? If anybody knew the answers to what you should be doing, they would have already built it. What you need is people who have built uh, startups of scale telling you that if you go on this path based on our experience, you might have this blind spots. That's more important, that's more pivotal. And one of the biggest values of Y Combinator was that some of the best startups in the globe today have come from Y Combinator. The second thing is it's super competitive, and as I said, one of the companies in the US who does what we do came from Y Combinator. So for that simple reason, we wanted to be there. And the third thing was, of course, Y Combinator changes the trajectory of your growth as well as your funding, right? Being from Y Combinator is itself a validation. And yeah, these are the three main reasons that it was super interesting for us.
Awesome. On that note, I think we are up with that time, and I
Sure.
would like to close the session. If you
Yeah.
have any other message, you can share with us now. Otherwise, we'll close the session.
I guess this was pretty much it. All I have is India is really opening up a lot, and the fact that, of course, COVID has put a lot of spanners into a lot of gears, but it's also an opportunity, and there's large inefficiencies that's coming to note right now. So if you're somebody who's planning to do a startup, or if you're a startup already building for it, just look at those gaps and go after it aggressively with the right metrics. And I think there's enough opportunity pool, there's enough money out there for startups of any size and type to, you know, seize the market right now.
Thank you, Nitin, for taking out time and joining this session. It has
Thank you,
been
Priya.
a pleasure and a great learning experience talking to you. Our best wishes for Made Piper.
Thank you, Priya. You have a good day too.
Yep. That is it for today's episode. We'll be back with another exciting entrepreneur. Stay tuned to LI.